Reality Check. I am your host, Beth Johnson, and
Franck Marchis.
We're here from the SETI Institute to overanalyze the science of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. And today we are talking about Season 2, Episode 6, Lost in Translation.
There is a third person in the room.
Oh, yes. And we also are joined by
Stormy.
She's we are actually up in the San Francisco office of SETI. So this is
different.
If you noticed last episode, we were in a different place. That's where we're at. As a reminder, we will be talking about plot during this episode. So spoiler alerts abound. Make sure that you have already seen the episode. Pause. Go watch it on Paramount Plus. Come back and check us out afterwards. And all right. So Lost in Translation. I like this episode.
Me too. I like all of them.
I mean, I do too. Yeah.
Let's like this one.
Let's be honest. We stan some Star Trek. Okay, so this episode we are heading to sort of an interstellar gas station.
Which is in a stellar nursery.
Yep, which is in a stellar nursery. So they are in a nebula. They're building this sort of fuel station to pick deuterium up from this nebula. And why is that an interesting place to be? Why a nebula? What's going on in here?
Well, because Star Trek, in the show, they use deuterium as a way to do this propulsion system that they have. And apparently, deuterium is highly concentrated in those nebula. So usually,
so what is deuterium first off?
It's an isotope of hydrogen.
Okay,
so H2. So what is interesting here is that they go to a specific location because there is a high concentration of gas.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the universe is full of nothing. In fact, even between the stars, there's absolutely nothing. But there is area in space where you have highly concentration of gas, dust, and in this area, those cocoons of gas and dust, we form as well stars. That's the way stars form. That's why we call them stellar nurseries.
Right.
That's why. So the most famous one is the Orion Nebula, for instance, that you can see with a small telescope in the winter in the northern hemisphere. So because there is a lot of gas, there is a lot of hydrogen, and deuterium is an isotope. It's a small fraction of the small fraction of all the hydrogen in the universe will be in fact deuterium. I forgot the exact number, but it's very small. So it's better to go to a place where there is a lot of the hydrogen to be able to find some deuterium.
Right.
They claim as well in the show, if I remember, that there is some patch of deuterium into this nebula. Physically speaking, it's very difficult to explain this non-homogeneous distribution of deuterium because deuterium is formed from a secondary product of the Big Bang, so it should be homogeneous in the entire universe. So I don't get it. But this is not science, it's science fiction.
Yeah, okay, so there's the science fiction part of the science. Yeah. Okay.
But there is some good science in the story.
Yes.
What I like in this episode is the fact that when they enter in the nursery, the nebula, you see a nebula, the inside of the nebula, and that's a bit the way I imagine it. If I'd been working in this show, I would have told them to put this kind of color. I would have put more red than orange, but it's not as fun because hydrogen is mostly emit light in red. But the structure, the filament that you can see, the kind of cocoon of stars surrounding by dust, etc. That's the way you can imagine a stellar nursery.
Yes.
So that's a good science, and it's always great to see that they use basically some of the research done by professional astronomers to show an astronomical objects from inside.
Shout out to the science advisor, Dr. Aaron McDonald, for the fabulous work on these aspects of the show. The science is always really good.
So the visuals are great. The source of deuterium is not that great.
Although I do like the telling Erica to Ortega to go run around and pick some up. Like it's just there.
It's just there.
It's just there. Just go drive through and grab it. It'll be fine. The collectors and I'm like, okay.
Right. So it's interesting because if the deuterium is really the source of the propulsion system of the Star Trek, there is not that much deuterium in our galaxy. So they must be counting the years here.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean by that. Is that the star fleets need to increase in size to be able to continue to sustain faster than light propulsion system.
Right.
So the future here is to always expand. So at the end, it's an extremely expansionist society that they have been creating.
And it's mentioned in the episode a couple of times how this is supposed to be sort of that interstellar gas station where it will open up a new frontier of exploration because they can now, like, you know, they'll have this fueling station where they can stop and, you know, do all the things that they need to do before progressing even further out, looking for new life and new civilizations.
Yeah, so it's a bit like our oil on this planet for the moment.
Yeah.
They need to find oil to be able to extend. Okay, so that's the first science we can talk about. But then the story gets very interesting because we have Uhura having hearing this weird sound in her head, right?
So there's a couple things going on. One is that number one has been and Pelia, our favorite Pelia, have been assigned with engineers to go over to this station and find out why it's not up and running already, because it was supposed to be. And in the process of things, they figure out that someone from Starfleet has been sabotaging it. They find the saboteur. That person has clearly lost their mind. And Uhura is kind of heading down the same path. She's having visions of disaster and chaos and death. And it's really getting to her. And she hasn't exactly had a lot of sleep to begin with. So she's tired. She's now seeing terrible images of things.
Hallucination.
And she feels like she's hallucinating. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. And then the saboteur breaks free on the Enterprise and blows himself to Kingdom Come, basically. He spaces himself. And Spock, I believe it is, stops Uhura from... Is it Spock?
I don't know.
Anyway, someone rescues Uhura. You'd think.
Yeah, I think that's Spock.
Yeah. So, and she's absolutely just, devastated trying to figure it out. And then because she's the communications officer, and here we come back to this topic that we've brought up a lot in the last few episodes, this idea of communicating in new and different ways, she realizes that perhaps this is someone trying to communicate with them, that these images of fear and death and destruction are not hallucinations, but they're warnings. They're an attempt to reach out and communicate and say, hey, what you're doing is killing us. And
so what are we doing that's killing these people?
So it turns out, and this again comes back to this idea that we might not recognize life when we first find it, is that there is life in the nebula already. And that by harvesting this deuterium, by burning it, we are essentially killing them. And that's not good.
No. So they are not like living in... There seems to be a species that somehow connect to the deuterium, but they live in another space continuum or something. But the deuterium is the connection that they have with our space. So when we use the deuterium, we basically kill them.
Yes. So, yeah.
So, and they communicate, instead of taking our computers or screaming at us, because they are not in our similar space time, they're in the subspace, and they call that in Star Trek, they cannot communicate directly with us. They cannot just pop up and have a conversation. So they use Uhura as a kind of a way to communicate.
Almost a conduit.
A conduit, yes. She's a conduit. But she has no idea. It takes a long time for her to understand the communication. And this is a problem we're going to have to face, or maybe we are facing. In fact, we don't know yet. Because if there is aliens who are very different to us, and they communicate, they send a signal to communicate with us, if we may not realize that this is a communication. In fact, it happened in the past that when we discovered Pulsar, we thought it was aliens speaking to us.
Little green men.
Little green men, yes. We have the same with fast radio burst. For a while, there was no scientific explanation, so maybe this is a non-natural signal. But this is different because it's into our electromagnetic spectrum, right? Those are radio we measure them with an instrument physically, etc.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, it's a subspace. So it's like basically if we have a quantum computer that's capable of connecting to an alternate universe, and this we have a signal coming from one of these alternate universes. That's the way I try to ground this idea. Okay, it doesn't know of subspace. I'm not sure it's a good one, but that's the way I understand it. So this is the first contact.
It is.
Species.
It is. Yeah.
And is it a successful one?
I would say yes, in that Uhura did figure out how to communicate with them. She got the point across to her superior officers that they needed to stop with this gas station, essentially, and they blew it up. Spoiler alert. To save them, and her visions suddenly go from death and destruction to much more, thank you, pleasant smiles, and then they fade out, and that's kind of the end of your first contact. But it was definitely a first contact, and it was definitely a new species of some sort.
Yeah, we don't know their name.
Nope.
We don't know what they look like.
Nope.
We don't know anything about them. So for me, it's not communication. It's just detection. Communication go in a way that you exchange information. So this is just detection of life. It's like if one day we listen to the stars and we hear a code coming in radio or a laser coming from those planetary system or coming from somewhere in space.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all. That's detection. The communication is that when you send something and then it's back to you. We can argue on the.
I know. I think I'm going to take the other side of that and say that it is communication. It is first contact, because they reach out to Uhura. She figures out what they're trying to say to her. She manages to convey back through her actions that she has understood them, and they convey back that they appreciate what she has done, that she has successfully done the thing they have asked. And I think that is absolutely a two-way communication. Yeah. Now, as for science goes, is it repeatable?
Yeah.
And that becomes like another issue, because they initiated the contact. They reached out to both the earlier engineer and to Uhura, but now that there is no need for that, would they reach out again? And I don't think they would. I think at that point the communication is ended, and first contact is also last contact.
So why did they choose Uhura? Why did they choose this officer?
She's the communications person. I mean, all you have to do is, if you're able to look inside people's minds for their memories to be able to pull from them and use them as a communication, then you could look at her and say, this is the person who has experience understanding alien civilizations and figuring out languages, and that these are methods of communication. I mean, we have witnessed it several times for her. So I think it's pretty easy. If that's your ability, if you can look into people and see who they are, then you can say, that's the person we would want to reach out.
Nice. So it's a communication. Okay, I will give you that. But it's not a species to species. It's species to one human or two.
To two, and we don't know why Ramon was picked against anybody else who might have been on the station at the time. So, I mean, I think that is fair. Like, there are a lot of unanswered questions.
So it's a very sad first contact.
It is a very sad first contact. Like
I'm hoping we're not gonna have a first contact like this if we know our lifetime, because that's it's basically a species screaming because we're killing them, and one or two person capable of hearing the scream and convincing somehow to stop killing them. Great.
Yeah.
It's a bit extreme.
It's very dark.
Yeah,
very dark. Not necessarily happy. Not all of first contacts seem to be happy. In fact, honestly, I think they all kind of stutter a little.
We'll see, maybe there is some cool one in the future. We don't know.
I hope so.
But that's even my point. The reason I'm saying that is because it's one thing I love about Star Trek, and this show specifically, when they talk about first contact or alien communication with Earth or with our species, they show how complicated and difficult it is, or it will be.
Yeah. It's not
Preparing
always.
us, basically.
And I think that's very true of Star Trek. That they show you the complexities of it. It's not just here's an alien species, everything is grand, let's trade technology. It's here's an alien species, and here's 50 ways that this could go horribly wrong right from the get-go.
Yeah.
But also, we have hope that we can work through these issues.
And something they show is there is a large diversity of different type of civilization, intelligence. I mean, the previous episode was about the Kirchhoff,
Mm-hmm.
who has master space continuum, whatever.
It's basically accessible only through a space-time rift.
Yeah, because they decided they were done with our space-time. We have this species who living somehow connected to the deuterium. I mean, it's always very diverse in terms of the type of civilization that we have. It's not easy, but it's also very interesting.
Yeah, and I think it does stick with sort of some of those SETI principles that we talk about, where communication is key, and really the first thing you have to figure out is how to understand each other.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else in this episode you want to talk about? I think we have done the.
I think that was kind of it.
Yeah, I think it's good.
I really liked it. I like when we get to see Uhura be kind of the intellectual, for lack of a better term, badass that she is. You know, they've really done a good job, I think, in this series of fleshing out who she was from the original series and showing like there is a reason why she's the communications officer and why she is really good at her job.
Yeah, they build a character for the future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's good. Okay.
Well, thank you everybody for watching. Remember to do all of the like, comment, subscribe. If you have questions for Franck and I, we do read the comments. I do respond to comments. Franck responds to comments. So feel free to chime in. Let us know what you think. And we will be back with the next episode, which, I am excited to talk about this one. I like this one. This is the infamous crossover episode with Lower Decks. So we will be back next week with that episode. So stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.